Okay, Zok Tehel the Gemara on the bottom of the Samach Pilim Days, 6 lines from the bottom, about 2 dots. Vamar Abnachim, Haiman the Oisef Pshiti Mechav. Somebody who was paying, he told his friend, "You have some change. Give me what you have in change." So the halacha is the ashich by tufanya. So he said, "You have $10," and there was more than $10 there. Ibich de shadas toya. If there's not so much extra there that someone wouldn't have noticed it, so clearly it was given to him in error. Mechayev lahadurele. You have to return it. V'lav. But if it's obvious that the guy must have known that he was giving more than you asked, then must be matana ba'alma hu diyahivli. It must be that he intentionally gave it to you as a matana, and he made believe like he didn't notice that he's overpaying. Maybe he wanted to give you money and shouldn't make it obvious. Question is, what does this have to do with the shaila of ribbis? So that those who learn, it's not a question of ribbis. It's merely a question of, when someone gave you this, can you assume it's a mistake or not? But there are others who learn that this was a repayment of a loan. And the question is it a gift or is it ribbis? Zaktimor, or forget, is it a gift and it's ribbis or is it a mistake? Zaktimor, hey chadami, bichdei shadas toya. How much extra would it need to be where it would clearly not be a mistake or clearly yes, a mistake? And the problem with that is it really makes a difference between a very wealthy person where even $50 he wouldn't even notice, and someone who doesn't have so much money where even $5 he'll notice. So therefore, Reb Acha helps us quantify what we can assume was a mistake and what we can assume was intentional. Amar Reb Acha b'rei Rabbi Yosef, going on to Samach Daled Amar Aleph, be'isuraisa v'chumshaisa. When we count money, let's say you're getting a guy $10,000. What I usually do is I make 10 piles. Each pile has $1,000 in it, and then it's easy to count out the $10,000. So in those days, they didn't count in ones. They either counted in tens. They had piles of $10, or they had piles of $5. So therefore, if you were supposed to give him 50 and you gave him 60, it's possible that he miscounted a pile. But if you're supposed to give him 50 and you gave him 52 or 53, there's no chance of a miscount. Clearly, he put in extra money there, and that we'll say was intentional. Omer le Rab Acha b'rei Rav or Rav Ashi. The inish tekifahu. If the person that overpaid is a tough cookie and he never gives anybody an extra penny at all, he's a karga guy. He's not into helping people and giving anybody anything extra. The lo yoyev matana, who never gives matanas. What will be the halacha? We also assume that he meant to give him a matana. Amarlei, no. Dilma mixel gozlei bivle b'cheshbon. Maybe this fellow once ripped you off, and he's embarrassed to come and tell you, "I owe you $10." So what he does is, whenever he had to pay you money anyway, he throws in a little extra. Hopefully, you won't ask, and this way he paid you back without having to come outright and admitting that he stole.
So he's not so tough after all.
The Tanya Hagoyzlas Chavera. Frank Gemara, okay, but what if it's a total stranger who never had any interaction whatsoever with this person? The loy shakel v'tari b'adei. How could you justify why you would have given him a gift? Maybe a third party who he did have to do with stole money from him. That third party was looking for a way to get money back to him. But Amarlein, he told this guy, if you ever have to pay money, throw him in some extra for me, and I will pay you back. So the question here is, we're literally twisting ourselves into a pretzel to justify being able to keep this extra money. What's pshat in that? So the first one tells us the real principle here is hamoitzi mechaber l'varaya. So if the guy who gave it came right out and said, "Listen, it's a mistake. I want my money back," Avada, he's got to give it back. But here, the person didn't say anything. He gave it to him. And the question is, can you keep it? Also, you can keep it. Even if I can find the most obscure and unlikely explanation as to why I can keep it, you're allowed to keep it. because of the principle of a Metzia Mechaber Levaraya, and it's like Taninale. And why don't you just ask the guy is a mistake? Because maybe you're going to blow his whole cover. Maybe he's trying to give it to you. So therefore, using the principle of a Metzia Mechaber Levaraya, you can justify keeping. Rav Kahana. Hava Yisivni Bishilni Perke the Rav. Rashi learns, I came in late at the end of Shir. You know, whenever you come into a drasha and you hear the Rav saying, you know you came just at the right time. So he came in just at the right time. Ushmoyis the Amar Kari Kari. V'lo Yadana Amar. I heard that the whole Shir he's talking about squash. What was he talking about with the squash? Basur the Kam Rav, after the Rebbe left the Shirum, Amr Lahu, he asked the other Talmidim, my Kari Kari the Ka'amar Rav, what in heaven's name was Rav talking about these squashes, these gourds in the Shir? Amr Li, so the Talmidim told me, Hachi Ka'amar Rav. This is the halacha that Rav is teaching in Shir today. Haiman the Yav Zuzah Legina Akari. Somebody prepaid a gardener. He said, I'm buying from you squash. Vika Ozli Asar Kari B'nei. And the going rate was, for $1, you would get 10 squashes that are each the size of a half amma, about 6 inches. A 6-inch squash for $1. You get 10 of them for $1. And he had them in stock, and you gave him the money for it. But the gardener said, before I give you these small ones, if you pay me for these small ones now, I'll give you, when they are fully grown, I'll give them to you, and they'll be a foot long. They'll be much bigger than the way they are now. So basically, you're prepaying in order to receive an extra benefit. So kum techais, it's mexicaribus. So lach is isnu shari. If he actually has the big squashes in stock, then it's allowed because you bought them now. They're yours already. But the last ones are not, they're usher because it looks like you're lending him money and he's paying you back by giving you more product than you really paid for. Fake more pshita. We actually learned this yesterday with the wax candles, right? You can't pay in advance and get 5 wax candles instead of 4. Zok Gemara, no. Here it's different because Mao de Tema Kivan de Memela Karabu. When you're paying for the small ones naturally are going to grow with the big ones. So maybe the facts that you're paying for small ones, we say that the big ones are already in existence because it's these small ones that are going to grow, and therefore shopper dummy it should be allowed, and who shouldn't be mexicaribus. Kamash Milan, that's also mexicaribus, and it's usher. Kiman, where do you see a support for this chumrah? Ki hai Tanya de Tanya, like the following Tanya, who learned this story. Someone's going to milk the goats that he has, or to shear the wool off his sheep, or to extract the honey from his beehives. And on the way, he met his friend. And he told his friend, whatever milk we're going to be able to extract from my goats, so you pay me now, and you'll get the milk later, whatever they produce. Or in all these 3 cases, it's mutter to do that. Why is that? Rashi explains, because yes, I'm going to give you a good price because you're paying in advance, but you need to understand something. You don't know what the yield will be. You might end up having a very schwache yield, and you stand to lose. Whenever you're taking a risk with the money that you're paying, that's not ribbis. It's only ribbis if it's a guaranteed gain or not loss. In other words, there has to be no downside. If there is any downside, that would not qualify as ribbis. That would qualify as a bet. But if you're guaranteeing a certain amount of yield and you're giving it him for less because he's paying up front, there it's also. Even though, yes, from the point that I sell it to you, until the point that I extract the milk, there will be more and more milk, more and more wool, more and more honey. So you're paying in advance to get a guaranteed benefit. Even the lesnu bahishaita, since the milk is not there at that time, the honey is not there at that time, the wool is not there. Some of the milk is there, but there's going to be a lot of milk that's going to come later. Wool will come later. Honey will come later. So you're paying now. You're not receiving something until later, and that's considered you're paying. You're receiving benefit for the fact that you paid early. Usher. So that is one shot. This is support. This is support to the halacha that. This is support for the halacha that Rav Kahana heard from the Talmidim of Rav about the squashes. Now, this is similar to the case of the squash. You're going to benefit. You're not allowed to do that if he doesn't have it in stock. Similar to the milk. Ikadamri, however, there are those who said that the halacha that Rav taught in Shir was l'kula.
So Yosy, just before you go, I want a little bit of if there is a division between the two or not, because the milk is exactly the same product. It's only a quantitative question. You're not saying, okay, if the baby also, if the sheep also gives birth and it's pregnant, so then I'm gonna sell that to you. You don't have it really be'en. Milk, it's merely a quantitative difference.
Yeah, but the milk that's going to come later is not here at all.
No, you're right, it is, but there is milk here. So milk malihacha malihasam. That's what I'm trying to differentiate.
So I'm happy you raised that, because I want you to see how the Gemara is going to make a difference by analyzing these nuances. So let's look at what Rava said. Igadami Amarava, the opposite. But in the case of the squashes, where you're paying now and there's small squashes here, and you're going to take bigger ones later, that would be allowed. And you don't say it's not here now, even though it's going to grow mamela, but it's not here now, and it's osir. No, it's mutter. You know why? Kivan the mamela karabu, since it's going to happen by himself, shaperdom, which is what you're arguing. But now it's a kasha on this psak from the brisa. A moment ago, it was a raya, which you didn't like it because you didn't understand the svara. You understand like Rava, yet the brisa still says not like Rava. Latanya kach the kach osir. Zok Gemara. Here's an interesting difference. Hasam, in the case of the milk, lav minei karabu. The milk that's going to be added on isn't growing out of the milk that's there. It's the animal that's producing more milk. To prove it, the shakla lahai. Even if I took all the milk out of the animal right now, there will be more milk produced. So you see that the milk that's produced later has no connection to the milk that's there now. So I can't say I'm buying something that's there now already. But in the case of the squashes, the big gourds only grow from the small gourds. The small ones grow to big. And I'll prove to you that it comes from the big ones come from the small ones. If you took the small squashes away, you're not going to have big gourds pop up in its place. Why? Because it's the small squash that are growing into the big squash. So therefore, the big squash are more here. The big squash are more here than the future milk is here. Therefore, in the brisa, in the case of milk, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. But in the case of squashes, you would be able to do it. I see you hapana because you were touching on that.
Yeah, it's really a very nuanced difference because the cow produces milk. I have a chazaka that the cow produces milk.
That's just true, but that milk is not here. I'm selling milk. I'm not selling cow. I'm not selling decal price. I'm selling milk, and that milk that I'm selling you is not here.
You're not selling, in a sense, a tree that the peiros aren't produced there.
Right.
When
not
the milk
decal peiros. It's just the milk. I'm keeping my cow. I'm keeping my sheep. I'm keeping my honey, my hive. But by the squash, I'm actually selling you this squash.
Wow, and that squash is, without it, there wouldn't be here. It's unbelievable. Okay.
So I'll let you hold the spontaneous generation. Okay.
I know, but you see that it's really a milk flow because the milk, you decide the cow can keep giving milk so long you milk it. right? The cow's going to
Really,
keep
sometimes
going.
I feel like my cow's running out of milk.
But does it? It never does. It just keeps milking and milking. My friend Vinny used to say about when you have a relationship with buyers and clients, he says sometimes you have to bring some milk back to the cow. You can't just be taking, you have to be able to be giving.
Yeah.
Can't be just lawyers. No, but what I'm
All right.
saying is that they're really, if I don't know enough about milking cow, but really they can continuously give. Sometimes they're bursting, you have to do it.
Yeah.
What I understand is just you
Gemara says
cutting, it's like closing a
more than what
hose.
the calf wants to nurse, the mother wants to nurse.
Right, because it's continuous flow. Whenever there's demand, it's there. That's what we know. It's not like
Yeah.
she has to put any effort. It's like a whole water coming out of a faucet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In Echami.
Okay.
So Amar Bayi. Shari Leila Inish, Lememer Lalachavri. A man is allowed to tell his friend, Helach Arba Zuze Achavita de Chamra. You have a barrel of wine. I'm paying you right now for the wine. But Itakva Birshusach. If it goes bad, it's your wine, it's not my wine. Iyakra Izila Birshusi. If it goes up or down, I have to deal with it. Problem here, there's a still problem of ribis, is because I'm not really taking it. Because if I was taking it, then if it went sour, it should be my problem too. So maybe I'm benefiting that extra level of insurance because I'm prepaying. Omalei Rab Shravi or Abaye. So Rab Shravi asked Abaye, why would this be allowed? Turning on to Omid Beis. Hakarav l'schav or rakak. Here, the only time it's not considered ribis is if you're taking a risk. You're not only going to benefit, there's a chance you're going to take a risk. That's not called ribis. But if you get into an arrangement that by prepaying, there's only an upside and no downside, that should be ribis. And here, as far as the wine spoiling, there will be no downside. Zok to Gemara, true, but Amar like keeping the makabel alezula. But since I am accepting the risk of the market rates going down for the value of wine, so there is some risk on my part. We consider it karav lazeh v'lazehu. We consider it karav lazeh v'lazeh, and we don't say just because I have the added benefit of a warranty that that's going to make it into ribis, because there is some downside. As long as there's some downside, it's going to be good. Tosfos has a long discussion, and he says there's a very big difference between when the price of an item goes up and down in a market versus if it goes bad. Because if wine goes bad, it doesn't mean that it was perfect until now and then I bought it and went bad. Usually, if a barrel goes bad, there was a problem in that barrel from day one. And that's why that shouldn't impact ribis. That you're entitled to that warranty because you want to buy good wine. You're not going to buy bad wine.
No, there's an inherent expectation, just like when you buy a car, that you might be getting a lemon, right? There's a 1 in 100 chance that you're going to be a lemon, unless you keep buying, non-fresh produce from the guy. But that's, I think, part of the expectation is that it might go bad. And the guy goes, mazol cho, whatever it happens, and I got to replace it.
So, and if you learn like that, ain't a chanami, but there's still a downside of zula. As long as there's some downside, we allow it and we say it's not ribis. It's only ribis if there's no option for down.
There's no such thing.
If it's heads, I win. If it's tails, you lose. Okay. Well, there is such thing in the last case where we said I'm selling you all of the milk that my sheep will produce, that my goat will produce, but a minimum of X dollars, a minimum of X. So you're protected from any downside, yet you have an unlimited upside. So that's called ribis.
Well, first of all, the sheep can decide to change its gender. That's number one. No, but the sheep can die also, right? They get sick.
Yeah, but if you guaranteed a certain amount and it got sick and died, you wouldn't have to pay.
So there's your zula.
There is no zula there because you're going to be
Oh, you're going to be liable.
against it. You got your money back. Actually, Tosfos specifically discusses if something happens to the sheep. He specifically discusses that.
Yeah, but he doesn't discuss gender change.
No, that didn't happen in those days. Let's see what it is here. Tosfos speaks about it here. I don't remember where it was, but it was in here somewhere. Tosha discusses if it can go bad, what type of damage could happen to it.
I'm following it on the screen. So I'm just following your fingers. This is what I'm looking at. Do you want me to look up at the
No, we're good. We're good.
That's what I see.
Okay, so let's go back there.
Okay. No, so if there's something that goes wrong with the sheep.
Yeah, but if he's guaranteeing you kach v'kach, so then there's no downside for you.
Right.
Dr. Mishnah, Hamal v'schaveroi, what if you lend somebody money, and the guy who you lent money happens to own a hotel? You lend Itche Bergman money, and then you want to stay in the Parkhouse Hotel. You're not allowed to take out a room in the Parkhouse for free. You don't have to worry; it's not happening. Don't get so excited. You don't have to. You're not allowed to stay in his hotel for free.
Which
not
part is not happening? 1 second. Lending him money or staying in his hotel?
But not only that, you're not even allowed to accept a reduced room rate. Why? So today we're going to actually have a discussion. Let me ask you a question. Let's say I borrow $5 from you, Akiva. Does that mean you can't say good morning to me anymore because it's ribbish? You're being nice to me. Does that mean if I ask you to pass me a tissue, I'm sorry, I can't do it? So the question is, what is ribbish and what is not ribbish? So
Right.
we're gonna from this sugi will prompt a discussion that the place can discuss what's called giving ribbish and what's called not.
And then I'll tell you what at the end I'll tell you what Rabbi Hirschman told Tzvi. That's mutter.
Okay.
And it depends if you used to say good morning to me or not.
Exactly. That's what it depends on. If normal friends do this for each other, doing it special for the purposes of if you're doing it even though you're a malva, it's not a problem. The only problem is do something that normal people don't do.
Okay, but just to be clear, ribbis has to be over on both sides. In other words,
we're not talking about deraisa here. It's not.
No, I understand. All
derabbanan.
What I'm saying is, I lend you money, and then, in my mind, if I want to ask you for a favor for something, I say, "Oh, I lent him money; he owes me." But you're lending it to me because you would anyway. You're going to lend me your lawnmower anyway. Is that ribbis, or do you need both parties?
Because if I ask you to pass me a tissue or lend me your lawnmower, you would do it anyway. So I'm not thinking, he has to lend it to me because I did him a favor. He would do it anyway. He has to do it for me because he's a neighbor.
No, but I'm thinking maybe it's not something custom, but I'm thinking because I lent it to him, I want to lend money. Or you say I better lend it to the guy. In other words, it's one-sided. It's only conversations of my own mind.
I think the litmus test is would you do it without the loan? Is it something that normal people do?
Yes, but I'm squeezing it a little more because there's what I mean is it's crossing my mind. That's what I mean. Yeah. And that happens.
I'm sure it does.
You're right.
I'm sure it does. And I wonder if that impacts the halacha. That's why your example you just gave shows so clearly how a Rav doesn't paskin the shaila. The shoyel paskins the shaila. Because when you're asking the Rav, am I allowed to do this for him? Right. Or am I allowed to ask this from him?
Right.
Really, you need to tell the Rav what you're thinking.
Correct.
Yes, in the back of my mind, I am thinking that he owes me.
Correct.
And if you don't present that to the Rav, and the Rav says it's mutter, you're fraudulently representing the Rav because you didn't ask him the right shaila.
Right.
So whenever says Rav Shlomo said this, Rav Shlomo says that. Yeah, of course, Rav Shlomo said this. What did you ask him that he said that?
Right. But the reverse
is on the shaila is not on the Rav. It's on the person who asked the shaila to make sure that he explains the situation exactly as it is.
Yeah, because so much of ribbis is really what's in the mind of the loiva and the malva, right?
And that means what might be ribbis for you might not be ribbis for me.
Correct. Yeah.
And again, I don't know if that's halacha, but that's an interesting point to ponder. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Bar Minyumi, Amar Rabbi Nachman, Ava Bish Amar Adorach B'chotzer Chaver Shalom Midaitoi Ein Tzarich Lalos Lo Yischar. Even though we learned that if you park on the lawn of Columbia University with your tent, you don't have to pay rent, but Hilveyu Vidor B'chatzeroi. But if you did this after you had lent him money, that changes the whole picture. Because it might not be stealing from him if you're benefiting from his property, but if there was a loan involved, now it's Mexican ribbis, that's a whole different shaila. And therefore, to avoid the Mexican ribbis. Why would I need Rabbi Yosef to tell this to me? We have our Mishnah that just said it. Tanina, Amavis Chaveroi, Lo Yidar B'Chatzerei Chinam, V'Lo Yiskar Mimenu B'Pachos Mipnei Shu Ribbis. So why? What is Rabbi Yosef telling me? What is Rabbi Yosef telling me that we didn't already learn from our Mishnah? Zokt Gemor Imi Masnisen. If we only had our Mishnah, I would have said the Mishnah is speaking in a case where you're actually getting a financial benefit. Havamina Hanamili B'Chatzor the Kaima La'agra, the Gavra David Lameger. That's if we're talking about a hotel that's made to rent out rooms. They're not made to give out for free. They're meant to be rented out. And I'm staying out of town. If I wouldn't stay in this hotel, I would have had to rent a room in another hotel. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. But what about if it's a Chatzor like Kaima? What if it's the front lawn of Columbia University that's not made to rent out? They're not using it as a source of revenue. The Gavud Le'avid L'Meger and the freeloaders there would never be renting hotel rooms. They would be parking on their parents' basement couch, right? So they're not really getting a financial benefit. A Malloy, I would have thought that would be allowed. I would have thought that would be allowed if it wasn't for ribbis. Kamash Malon, that it's allowed, but it's only for ribbis that it's not allowed. It's only for ribbis that it's not allowed. Because even that is Mexican ribbis. Even though technically there is no value in the service or the space that I got.
So just to be clear, Yosy, just to be clear, and I think you said this already once, but it only when there's money at least going one way is the ribbis. So if you lend me a lawnmower and I want to come back and then borrow your RV vehicle, right, which is a much more expensive one, that's not considered ribbis.
Well, that's not ribbis because you're talking about she'ela. If I lend you $100 and then you want to borrow my RV.
Right. But not if you lent me a lawnmower, which had a value.
That's not a halva. It doesn't apply to ribbis at all. That's she'ela.
Okay. Yeah, but what I'm saying is to upgrade the she'ela, since I lent
that for sure is not ribbis.
For sure not ribbis.
Yeah.
No. That's the out. Right.
And look, Ikadamri, there was another version of how the story went down. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Bar Menyumi, Amar Rav Nachman, but Hilveni, what if the Levi says, do me a favor, lend me money, and you know what? The next time you're in the neighborhood, you could stay by my house. Hilveni v'dar b'chatzeri, that's already worse, because there you're speaking it out. There, tzorich l'alach l'schar. So Zok Gemara, man damar hilveyu, if you hold that even if I didn't speak it out, it just happens to be that I had lent you money, and now it happens to be that I'm staying in your house, and even that's also surely if the loiva actually said, do it and I'll let you stay there, it's much worse. You're actually specifying. But the mandam who said it, the Isser is only by Hilveni, aval Hilveyu loy, there you'll say, if punkt I happen to have borrowed money from you, and punkt you want to stay in my house, that might not be a problem. Even the meikara lava daita the hachi uspe, since when I originally lent you the money, there was no thought that I would stay in your property for free. Leslimba, we're not concerned. We won't say it looks like ribbis. Rabbi Yosef Bachama, Takif Avdi de Inchi, the Maset Buzuze. If somebody owed Rabbi Yosef Bachama money, you know what he would do? He would seize their avodim, and he would hold on to them until he was paid in full. And while he was holding on to them, he actually let them work for him. So the question is, there's ribbis there because besides the fact that they're going to have to pay him in full before they get their Eved back, he also benefited from the free labor that the Eved provided for him. So Amalei Rava Barei, everybody has a Frum Yeshiva son who says, Tati, how could you do that? My Rebbe taught me, my time of Ovid Marhachi. Why are you doing this? Isn't it a problem of ribbis? Amalei, so Rabbi says, don't worry, I know what I'm talking about. I know Rab Nachman's really. I know like Rab Nachman. You know what Rab Nachman once said about avodim in general? They're union workers. Amar Rab Nachman, Avda, Nahum Kreisi Lo Shafi. The evidence is not even worth what you're feeding him. It's like no matter how much you eat by a parlor meeting, you don't get your money's worth. And the evidence not even worth, could never even be worth that much. And I'm feeding these avodim. So it's not like I'm benefiting, so there's ribbis here. Amar Lei, that doesn't apply to all avodim. That applies to go-go dancers. Amalei, Amer, the Amr of Nachman, could go in Dari Avde, Dario, his servant, the market Bekuvi. He was a go-go dancer. Go-go dancers don't make money. They just get free wine. That's where Rab Nachman said that he doesn't even produce nearly what I feed him. But Avdi Achrini, a normal Levitt who does normal productive work, mi Amar. So back to you, Tati, how could you benefit from these avodim? Why isn't it ribbis? Amalei Rabbi said, don't worry, I have another heter that I can pull out of my pocket. You know what happens? You know, when your son attacks you with something you're doing wrong, you try one thing and then he slugs it up, and then you're like grappling for reasons why you're trying to justify yourself. I'm not the Russia that you think I am. Amalei Anah, ki hader Abdaniyah by Rav Katina Amarav Sfirli. The Amar, he said, Hatoik of Avdei Shal Chavere va'asa by malacha. If you seize the evid of your friend and you do malacha with him, potter. You are potter from paying. Why are you potter from paying? Because you're the person whose evid you stole benefits from it. You know why? The nichalei nishtari avdei. You know, I might not have enough work for him full time. You keep him busy. The main thing is keep my evid busy. He shouldn't become a lazy union worker. So therefore, Rabbi Yosef said, I'm allowed to do it because I'm not benefiting. I'm helping him. Amar Lei, his son said, Tati, I don't buy that. Why isn't it that, and you should always go over to people's avodim and make them work to help them. If it's all about helping them, so you should be walking around helping people. You're only doing it for the guy who owes you money. So there would be allowed. Mar batati, keeping the mask since the fact is they owe you money, it doesn't look right. It's a pastach nishtati. How can you do that? They always get you at that. But when you borrow money from somebody, you have to be particularly sensitive to what you take from him. So Rabbi Yosef says, you know what, my son? I back out. You're right. I shouldn't do it. I won't do it anymore. So that's really so. What did Rabbi Hirschman say about ribbis?
Oh, he said that I don't know if he's talked about credit in the business, but lending money. He said that when you accept, obviously, it's saying thank you might be a shaila, right? It might be.
Moshe is not a shaila because it's a normal thing. It's
right, but
part of the normal thing people do.
Correct. He said even though those who want to be machmer, obviously, Hirschman is always dealing with people who are being machmer. And maybe naturally they don't say thank you. I don't know, but he told me that at least let me see in your eyes that you have gratitude. That's what he said. That's okay. Rabbi Hirschman told me that those people who
gratitude is not ribbis.
Gratitude is
not ribbis. So, but let me ask you a question. Is buying him an aliyah ribbis? Bringing him shalach manas?
So we discussed it yesterday. It depends. Is this before the loan or after the loan? When is this?
I guess if you wouldn't have done that before the loan, you're not allowed to do it after the loan. But maybe
I don't think so.
Subtle ways of showing gratitude.
Listen. What do I know? I don't think so. I would buy an aliyah. The guy's going to say, "What do you mean he's buying me aliyah? He owes me $100,000 and he's spending $200 on aliyah, giving me the cash." Right?
So because he's not getting anything. He's just getting frustrated.
Are you
allowed to buy a guy shalach manas?
So I think first of all it would depend where are you in the relationship? Did you pay him back already?
But if it's a guy who you know, and you know.
Okay, no. So let's bring it down, right? I know it's being crossed. So let's say so you borrow $50,000 from Sakachevsky or whatever. You have this big loan, and at what point are you buying him the aliyah? That's what I mean. When does it matter when you're buying him an aliyah? After you paid it off? Before you?
That's called ribbis. That's called ribbis mukdemis and ribbis mucheres, which the Mishnah says is also derivon.
Would you buy him? But buying an aliyah in itself is not a bad thing.
So if he's a Levi, Mamela, it's cheap. But what if he's a Yisrael?
What if he's a mafter yoina, right? He's a shishi, right?
Shai told me, you think it's good to be a Levi, you get cheap aliyahs? Adrabah. Your friends buy you aliyahs, and then you got to buy him back Yisrael.
That's right. Mr. Lightman, you should tell his kids.
Maybe we should ask Rabbi Lo, to what extent do you have to be concerned? And does it depend on you and him? Like, is it very variable? And then you have to ask a Shaila every single time.
Yeah, and also what happens is that you start connecting the dots because buying an aliyah is public. I think there might be a difference between buying an aliyah and
There's a huge Taisha said after milsa. Something that's in public is a much bigger deal. So buying an aliyah would probably be much worse than bringing shalach manas. Because
correct.
after
Right.
milsa, if it's something that's
Yeah.
public and people see, that's much worse. That's why the Taisha talks about staying in someone's chutzner. People see you; it's noticeable. Something that's more private would be less of an issue.
Yes, and especially buying the aliyah, because buying the aliyah, we don't care who gets the aliyah. We want to know who bought it, right? So you're putting the spotlight back on yourself. So, oh, he bought him the aliyah, right? So I think that might be a bit of an issue.
When you borrow, sometimes you run out of milk, you run out of eggs, so you borrow from the neighbor, right? You borrow ketchup from the neighbor. So let me ask you a question: you borrow the ketchup from them, so you sometimes what if you use it up and you buy them a new bottle, but you didn't borrow the whole bottle? Is that ribis? Or you borrowed milk?
No, but you told me that's what I asked you originally. You said, "Shoyl, it has to be money. The first transaction has to be money."
Well, no. Let me explain to you something. Money is something that you're using. If I borrow a lawnmower, I'm giving you back your lawnmower. If you're buying ketchup, that's more like borrowing money because you're not borrowing the bottle of ketchup to use as decoration. You're going to use the ketchup and you're going to buy new ketchup. That's just like money. It's like it, right? Anything that you borrow that you're giving back the actual item, that's called shayla. But
okay, so I have this
replenishing. That's like there's no difference. There's no difference between borrowing ketchup and borrowing money. You're not giving you back the ketchup.
So then it changes. So that Yosy, that wasn't clear before. I thought lawnmower also there's a little bit of a depreciation. So let's bring it down to level. I borrowed Lazar's power washer, right? And he had a leak in the hose, and he was taped up already, and I got soaking wet because of the leak. I said, forget it. I'm going to buy him a new hose. It was $25 on Amazon. It's cheaper than a power washer, and I went and I bought it. Am I returning
that's
it? That's
not a shayla at all. Because that's shayla. Because that's shayla.
So it's not like a ketchup bottle.
No.
So what if you borrow somebody's car and return it a tank full? If I borrow someone's car, I always return it full.
Well, when you're borrowing someone's car, you're doing two things. You're being shoyed the car, and you're borrowing gas. And you're borrowing gas. So the question is, are you allowed to put more gas in than you got? Is that ribbis? So the Torah says that's not ribbis because it's a normal thing to do. You'll fill up a guy's car for him. But if it's something you're only doing because he did you the favor and he lent you the, if anything, you're buying him gas because you lent you the car. That's not a problem. But if you're only buying him more gas because since he used half a tank, you want to put him back 3/4 of a tank, that might be ribbis. But are you putting him back 3/4 of the tank because you used half a tank? Or you're putting back 3/4 of the tank because you borrowed his car? You're allowed to give ribbis for a she'ela because you're thanking him for lending you something.
Right.
But on halva, you're not allowed to give ribbis.
Oh, so on the gas component of it, that might be ribbis.
So what I could do is if I borrow money from somebody, I can also tell them, let me borrow your car. And then I can buy him an aliyah.
Or what you have to do, I think, is share but you have to go to some. If he lent you money, that means he probably lent someone else money. So the two of you together have to buy an aliyah for him. You have to dilute it.
And then they would think, why would Chaim and Beryl both buy Shmuel and aliyah? Well, I wonder what they have in common there.
Yeah, so you're gonna start connecting the dots. You go, no, he owes it this, and then it'll misdirection, right? It'll be wag the dog, right? Gavaldik.
It's going to be one big koila.
Yeah, this is Gavaldik because this is going into people's motives as to why they do favors.
Yeah.
Right. To me, and I've been in meetings when Boo Boo has said this. The guy owes me. Right.
We're being recorded, by the way.
That's okay. Boo Boo's proud of it. He's proud of it. The guy owes me. I remember being in meetings and we were speaking to this guy. I got to speak. He owes me, and I'm trying to. What does it mean he owes you? Did you arrange for him a loan for down payment? Because Boo Boo did that for me, right? He helped with that to get me a loan, and I forever feel indebted to him for getting me that loan. By the way, is that an issue on me or that's an issue on him?
I think you should always feel indebted to someone who helps you. The person who helped me buy my house, every time I see him, I thank him. I said, I would never have a house if it wasn't for you.
Right.
I'd still be living in a shoe if it wasn't for you.
Right. Right. Yeah, so tell me that's not ribbis. Do you still buy him shalach manas? Or you buy him an
No,
aliyah?
you know what it feels like every month to pay the lease rates for Mr. Blumen's car?
You think the you're not, you're helping by paying for that lease. It's really giving parnasa to Weinberger. You
Yeah,
understand?
but you do
Yeah.
have to know that the apartment rentals are linked to the cost of the lease car for the executives.
Oh, is it?
They
You
go up at the
trying to
same rate.
connect that dots where they go, the money gets spent? I don't know. That's already a higher.
Okay, love my guy. We gotta
Okay,
get to work.
Shkoyach, you could
Have a
call this
wonderful day.
shear "Keep Milking the Cow."
Oh, man, thank you.
Okay, Gavaldik, I loved it. Today you brought the Torah down to the nittiest of grittiest. Mamish l'mata me'asar tefachim. Shkoyach.
That's what Ezeu Nashach is. It's very much nitty gritty. It's
Nitty
practical.
gritty.
Okay, see you
Every
later.
single transaction.